And welcome to this short lecture in lieu of our class meeting on Tibetan Buddhism and the joy of the Dharma and all of those other things that we would be talking about if we were meeting today, but we are not. So here we go. I want to tell you a few things about Tibetan Buddhism to get us started. So Tibetan Buddhism is the smallest of the three major branches of Buddhism, but it's probably the best known in the West because it is represented by the Dalai Lama, who is a very popular, well-known figure in the West, and because it's tied up in the Tibetan independence movement, which is a product of China having conquered Tibet in 1950. So anyway, here's what you need to know about Tibetan Buddhism to understand today's readings. Point number one. Tibet was essentially a Buddhist state up until 1950, and then at that point, China invaded Tibet and took over Tibet, and at that point, the Buddhist government of Tibet under the Dalai Lama was exiled to Nepal, and so much Tibetan Buddhism is actually practiced outside of Tibet in Nepal, in India, in Bhutan, and all of the stuff that happens in today's reading takes place in Nepal, where Lama Yeshe is one of the Tibetan Buddhists who is living in exile there. And so let's then talk about that word Lama, 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 like Lama Yeshe. In Tibetan Buddhism, um, Lamas are incarnate bodhisattvas. So let's back up a bit and make sure we know that term. And look in Prothero if you don't remember that. But the term bodhisattva is a term from Mahayana Buddhism that refers to somebody who could achieve Buddhahood but chooses not to for the sake of everybody else on earth. So the idea here is that somebody worked so hard that they basically got to the doorstep of enlightenment but were drawn back to this world to help others achieve enlightenment as well. So in Mahayana Buddhism, bodhisattvas function essentially like gods, and they are worshipped like gods. They have shrines, they're given sacrifices, things like that. In Tibetan Buddhism, bodhisattvas are understood to incarnate themselves in dynasties of religious leaders called lamas. And so Lama Yeshe would be understood to be an incarnate bodhisattva who exists on earth to help other people achieve enlightenment. And you can see that's exactly what he does in his work with Jan Willis. He helps her to achieve enlightenment. So that's what you need to know about Tibetan Buddhism to make sense of today's readings. For next time, for Thursday, we'll talk about tantric practices and how that fits into Tibetan Buddhism. For now, just understand that Lama Yeshe is a Tibetan Buddhist monk, an incarnate Lama who represents somebody who could have achieved enlightenment but chooses to stay here to help others achieve enlightenment. Got that so far? Note taker? Okay, good. I'm going to move on, okay? I'm going to move on. So this is Lama Yeshe. And Lama Yeshe is a pivotal figure in today's reading because, as you recall, she meets him almost by chance. As you remember in one of the chapters, she finds out about this teacher from Cletus, and she goes to meet him, and his caretaker, Zena, Mama Zena, won't let them meet with him. But as they're trying to leave, he approaches them and invites them to study, and then has this precocious knowledge of this car accident that happened to them in France. And so when he says, I'm sorry about the bad thing in France, he's letting them know that he has special insight into their lives. And that forges an immediate connection between Willis and Lama Yeshe. So Willis and also Rand and Rob study with Lama Yeshe for a while. And that's what leads up to the thing I wanted you to write about today, which is that question, Buddha's mind is angry today. And I hope that you did some good work coming up with explanations for what that means. We'll talk in class on Thursday about your explanations. I'm not going to talk about it here, but just understand that that is a pivotal moment in today's reading, a point at which Willis comes to understand something she had not understood before, and it's a result of Lama Yeshe's insight and understanding that helps her to see this. So another thing that happens is this chapter, The Test, and that's this bizarre thing where Willis is sent by Lama Yeshe over to another teacher, his teacher, to learn things. And you remember she gets sidetracked and she takes her time getting to him, and when she arrives, he yells at her. He upbraids her for being late, and she's stunned and doesn't understand why. And then when she goes back to Lama Yeshe, he also upbraids her and yells at her and is angry with her, and she doesn't understand why. And then she recognizes why. She understands. And this is hard to get. So I want to make sure that we draw this out a bit. Did you notice how at the beginning of that chapter, yes, beginning of that chapter, she talks about the experience of growing up black and of growing up facing the countless daily indignities of being a black person in a racist society, and this struggle to find balance between personal dignity on the one hand and pride on the other hand, to find balance between bye Kelly, that struggle to find balance between um, righteous indignation and self worth on the one hand, and all consuming destructive anger on the other hand, that we've already talked about. That's one of the main themes of today's reading. Buddha's mind is angry today. Anger and balancing anger with other emotions is an important part of today's reading. But in this case, it seems like the resolution that she comes to is one in which she recognizes that she can trust Lama Yeshe, that he genuinely sees into her experience. He gets her anger. He gets that she is mad and that she struggles to process her rage. And that's the moment at which she decides that she can fully trust him as a teacher and move forward in learning from him. And so she has her initiation in that chapter, The Joy of the Dharma. And then we get to her meeting with the Dalai Lama himself. And this is where things come to a head, because she asked the Dalai Lama point blank, so next time I'm on campus and some people have guns, and it's like my friends or the guys with guns, and what do I do? Like, is it okay to kill as a Buddhist? Is it okay to fight as a Buddhist? And the Dalai Lama's words are really powerful and really worth reflecting on, not because they're right or wrong, but because they give insight into what is so compelling about Tibetan Buddhism for Willis. Did you notice what he says? Go ahead and like pause this and look at that chapter, Flesh and Bones Buddha, if you don't remember, and then we'll come back. So pause. Ding, 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 ding. All right, you're back. Good. So what does he say? He says, if you are angry, if you act in violence or you kill out of anger, then you have committed a crime. You've done something wrong. But if you can act violently against somebody while still wishing the best for them, while still wishing them a good rebirth, then you can do what you have to do to defend your friends. And so think about how that provides a sense of balance for somebody with Willis's background, how that doesn't negate or repress her genuine anger and her genuine hurt as growing up as a black person in a racist society, but it also provides a channel for how to express that, how to deal with that. And then watch as we read further in the book, how does that play out for her in her day-to-day life? Because it's not always neat and easy. All right, so thank you for your discussion post. Thank you for listening to this. I will see you all on Thursday. Fare thee well.